YouTubers, Spacebot here, coming back at ya. I've been having conversations with somebody who is basically a bit of a conspiracy theorist, and the problem is some people who are conspiracy theorists think that they're skeptics, and they're really not. They're denialists. How do you know the difference? Well, it's good to be a skeptic, but that doesn't mean just being skeptical of everything. Gravity's real. How do you know? I'm skeptical. Okay, jump off this building. Here's some evidence. Or observe rock dropped off building. In a safe environment, of course. So you can prove the law of gravity, which is also a theory, and you can demonstrate theories such as evolution, and a theory is just an explanation for a body of fact or observation with predictions and grounds for falsification. So, how do you know she's a witch? How do you know when you're being a denialist or a good skeptic? So let's say someone says, I'm a psychic. I'm like, no you're not, which is the correct answer. But I would say, well, show me how you're a psychic. First, define what you think a psychic is. Define what you think your powers are. And then you can test those claims, right? Which is what the scientific method does. We test claims, we test truth claims. Someone says there are dragons flying amongst us. Well, show me one so I can observe it, so we can independently observe it, we can peer review it, we can study it, etc. And of course the person might say, this is all basically based on a Carl Sagan example. It's not my own original example. But they might say it's an invisible dragon. Well, okay, well we can measure things that are invisible, like the wind. You can see the indirect result of wind. You can see trees blowing. You can see a fan blowing a piece of paper. You can feel it. You can measure air pressure, etc. Eventually, you would realize that the claim itself is fairly well incoherent or indistinguishable from that thing not existing at all. In other words, if you employ Occam's razor, which is the simpler explanation is better, and simpler meaning fewer assumptions, not just simple, because some things are very simple, like Cthulhu did it. Okay, that's simple, but it's silly. We're talking about fewer assumptions. And so there's no reason to assume the hypothesis or the assertion that a dragon exists if it's invisible and incorporeal and can't be measured in any way. Then you may as well just reject the assertion as inconsequential or just folly. Now, with conspiracy theories, the conspiracists often think they're being skeptical, like, we gotta green our vaccines. I'm like, okay, well, first, who's the expert that said that? Do you understand why vaccines seem to have, quote-unquote, dirty elements in them? Well, there's a reason for that, and it's because they trigger a better immune response. And triggering a better immune response means fewer people come down with the illness, better herd immunity, better protection for people, and mostly infants, that can't receive vaccines. Basically, herd immunity protects every single person that cannot receive a vaccine. Some people are allergic to egg proteins that are used to develop vaccines. Herd immunity is important, and without herd immunity, you'll see the resurgence of once well-controlled diseases, such as MMR, which is mumps, measles, rubella, or whooping cough, pertussis, and influenza. We have a very good antigen for that, especially the seasonal flu. Vaccines work. If there's another pandemic like the one in 1919, which killed 50 million people, you're going to want a vaccine, and that vaccine will work, and it will probably save your life and the lives of many people you love. And that's the thing. If you have a newborn baby, even if you're an anti-vaxxer, ironically, you're being helped by all the people who properly vaccinated themselves or their kids, mostly their kids, and are contributing to herd immunity. That actually protects your little anti-vaxxer baby. Of course, the baby's not at fault, but the baby of anti-vaxxers. Vaccine deniers may think that they're being skeptical, and they're really not, because part of being a skeptic is understanding the limitations of your own knowledge and understanding that experts are so-called for a reason, right? Experts, let's say in string theory, are better equipped to challenge the claims of other string theorists. So, if Michio Kaku is talking about string theory, I'm in no position to challenge him, because what the F do I know about string theory? A whole lot of nothing. You would want another scientist to vet that scientist, and that's called peer review. And this happens all the time when scientists publish in journals. Nature, or whatever it is, Cell. So this is why you publish. This is why you expose your hypotheses and theories to peer review, because a theory always has grounds for falsification, right? The way to falsify evolution is, I think it was J.B.S. Haldane that said this. He was a biologist and many other things. He said, if you can find rabbit fossils in the Precambrian, you can disprove evolution. And of course you don't. And the theory has predictions, and those predictions are based on what we already know. So evolution can always be falsified if you can falsify it. Anyone can go and falsify it, and you know what? Not only would they make a lot of money, they would make a great name for themselves. So those of you who claim that Big Pharma is all about the money, there's a lot of money in curing cancer if someone has a cancer cure. And the minute there's a cure, there's going to be gobs of money made and many millions of lives saved. And just because there's money to be made doesn't mean it's false. People make money selling water. Well, water is still water. You can still drink it, even if Nestle shouldn't necessarily be hogging all the water and selling it back to us. And then we buy it, which, you know, there are times when you need water in a bottle, I get it. But there's ways around that. You can use reusable bottles or get a filter for your tap, whatever. The way to know if you're a conspiracist, well, understand the limits of your own knowledge. If you're not an expert, and the experts are all saying worldwide as a consensus that vaccines have efficacy and are safe and have saved millions of lives, then that's probably sufficient to believe that, because you know that any scientist worth his or her salt is going to be able to challenge any claim that isn't true. And if you're reading natural news and thinking that you have evidence against vaccines that nobody else knows about, well, that's probably a conspiracy. Now, the thing is, some conspiracies are actually conspiracies. People do conspire. Watergate, that was a true conspiracy. But guess who found that out? People employing science and the scientific method. Nothing corrects itself better than science, right? And how would you even prove a lot of these claims if they were true? You would use science. If, for example, vaccines needed to be cleaned up, you would use science to prove that or demonstrate that, demonstrate the harm. But the reason a lot of those components are in those vaccines, again, chemistry, the dose matters. So if you see ethyl mercury in a vaccine as a preservative, that's a trace amount. Your body already has mercury in it because, as you guys know or should know, you are the product of stars and supernova. Literally, every molecule in your body was forged in the hearts of stars and supernova. This is why Sagan always said, we are made of stars. We're all made of stars. So, understand the limits of your knowledge. Don't be so declarative if you don't know what you're talking about. Rely on the experts, but also rely on expert peer review. And if you have enough knowledge, you can try to falsify something, sure. But just make sure you're going on the evidence and that you don't have some dogmatic bias for which you're using selective evidence or confirmation bias. Because if you're only trying to confirm your bias, you're not really doing science. You're doing something else. You're doing dogma, right? I may want to believe something, but that doesn't mean I should only find corroborating evidence for that belief, right? I should be willing to adjust my belief for the evidence. So vaccines have efficacy, they work, they've saved millions of lives, and you never got polio. So you're welcome. Thank your parents and your grandparents and so on. Alright everybody, this has been SpaceBot coming at you. Until next time, SpaceBot out.